Okay. Hopefully we got some sound. I feel like it's picking some stuff up. That's good. Hopefully the audio sounds fine. Hopefully it's not too loud. I'll close this down for now so I can see the chat. Screen-wise, everything should be coming in okay. So over the last couple of days, we've been engaged with our Discord a little bit. Okay, hold on. It says I'm dropping frames, so I gotta plug into the internet, I guess. Give me 1 second. I just gotta grab a cord. Sometimes my internet is strong. The last couple of days, it seems really wonky. I don't really know why. I guess we get punished. That's fine. So reset this up here. It might click out for a split second. Because sometimes when you switch over to the plugged-in internet, it drops stuff because it hates me. That's fine. Let's see what we got here. Quickly check this. We appear to be live. We have noise. We should be plugged in now. We should be good. My head looks okay. A little bit big today, but that's fine. Maybe if we tone this down a little bit, it won't be super loud. Hopefully we still come through okay here. Okay, so today's stream, as we were saying a second ago, was based on an idea thrown to me by one of my Patreon backers. They had said, hey, why don't you do some deck techs for Magic? Why don't you do some more discussion videos on your streams? Just because during your streams anyway, we tend to talk about Magic a lot. That's fine. So I figured today would be a good day to try something different just because it's not a normal stream day anyway. So if it looks bad or doesn't work out quite as well as we'd like it to, hopefully we will be able to switch it, flip it around, make it look decent. So what we're going to do today is we're going to discuss Modern. For those of you who play Arena only and are viewers here on the channel, Modern goes all the way back to 8th edition, which is, I want to say, about 15-ish years worth of cards now, maybe more, maybe less. I don't remember the exact number anymore. And for those of you who aren't necessarily competitive grinders, normally come the summer season is when the quote-unquote eternal formats, so Modern, Legacy, Vintage. Okay, we can turn it up. Hopefully that'll turn it up a little bit. I don't want it to be too loud. Let me see here. Audio. That's not what I wanted. Advanced. Oh, that seems okay. So hopefully it's not super quiet now. We did turn it up some. Hopefully that helps. Yeah, it should be fine. Okay. But people had recommended to me they would like to hear my thoughts and opinions on the Modern format right now. So we have made two sets of things. We have made the cards that we think could, should, or what the internet is ablaze about for stuff that could get banned, should get banned. And then another list of stuff that could potentially be unbanned for Modern, though nothing probably will get unbanned. So for those of you unaware, there's an SCG tournament going on this weekend. There's also I think there was a Mythic Championship this weekend or something along those lines. And it seems as though the Hogak deck is sort of going ham. For people who don't know what that list looks like here, we're just going to bring it up quickly. So we got some Carrion Feeders, some Grave Crawlers, some Neonates, Stitcher Suppliers, Bloodghasts, Vegevine, Hogak himself, which has really good art, by the way. I think this card has fantastic art. I really wish that it wasn't on a card I'm never going to use, but whatever. Faithless Wheeling, Cathartic Reunion, some Altar of New Magic, Bridge from Below, and then some land. The point of the deck is it's essentially a dredge deck, well, this one not so much, but you're trying to dump your stuff into the yard, use things like Vegevine to come back, Bloodghast to bring themselves back, Gravecrawler to come back. Every time you're sacking dudes to things like the Carrion Feeder and all that good stuff here, you have Bridge from Below to make a whole bunch of tokens, keep playing your Hogak You keep milling them with the Altar. You go critical mass with the Hogak and that. Go crazy, mill their deck. A lot of people right now are not really thrilled that this is a deck in the meta. A lot of people do believe that it is tier 0, completely unbeatable. Do I think it's beatable? Yes. But if you look here at the current metagame for Modern, Hogak Bridgevine, Izzet Phoenix, Mono Red Phoenix, Dredge, all of these decks make use of their yard. And a lot of people do not like these decks just because they attack either on an unfair axis for most people. They feel like it's not fair what they're doing. Some people think the decks are too fast. While I do think the Hogak deck has the ability to go a little fast, I will say that I think Colorless Eldrazi is probably um, one of the better decks in the format right now. And I know like Humans doesn't use its yard. Azorius does to an extent through things like Snapcaster and their Delve counterspell that they have, the Logic Knot. So I mean, they sort of make use of their yard, not quite to the point that other decks do, but I mean they're still touching their yard here and there a little bit. So we're just gonna have a little discussions video on. We're gonna look at the cards that people want banned first. Then we'll talk about the. I do think that Colorless Eldrazi is fair, but having the word Eldrazi attached to it immediately makes people hate it just because of the Urza lands, which a lot of people want gone. I don't feel like they need to be right now. We'll get into that a little more. I do think Eldrazi Temple, of course, is a huge enabler for the deck. I know there are some people who kind of want it gone. It's more of a fringe land, though. I think people would rather see the Tron lands go just because they're annoying. Um, but it is a very strong deck. I think that Eldrazi Tron, or colorless Eldrazi as Goldfish, so has it listed here, has replaced Tron as the big mana deck. I don't think Tron is really relevant right now, and we'll discuss that a little bit too. So without any more blah 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 blah, we're going to get into it here. So we're going to go into our decks. As you can see here, we have the modern ban list discussions. I'm going to touch on one card at a time. You're free to look over this list as you want. Some of the things on here are on here for other reasons, so I wouldn't necessarily look at it and go, oh, okay, you know, these are cards that should be banned. We're just going to kind of go over and discuss some stuff. So we're going to start off here with Hogak himself. 5 mana and 2 Golgari mana. You can't spend mana to cast this spell. Convoke and Delve. Convoke allows you to tap creatures to reduce its mana cost. Delve allows you to exile cards out of your graveyard to also reduce its mana cost. You can cast it from your graveyard. Trample 8/8. Okay. So first off, looking at the text on this card, and I've been saying this for a while now, is that this is one of the cards that could have either been obscenely busted or completely balanced based on that text. Delve is something they really don't know how to use properly. They've showed time and time again. Convoke on this creature is actually a little weird because clearly it slots right into the Bridgevine deck just fine and does a ton of work. It does slot into decks like Dredge just fine and does a ton of damage. The casting it from your graveyard is really why I think right now people don't like it. Don't get me wrong. A turn 2 8/8 is broken, especially with cards like Path to Exile. Not really seeing play right now. You can't bolt it. You can't push it. You know, you have Terminate, but Terminate's not really seeing play. You have things like Dreadboard. Dreadboard's not really seeing play. So the main kill spells for this card right now are pretty much Lily Sack, which Liliana Veil is not very good right now, and Path to Exile, which really nobody's playing. Personally, I do think this card is fair. I don't think we should ban this card yet. It just came out. We have 2 weeks, 3 weeks of data. We have a couple tournaments under our belt. I feel like this card hasn't been given its proper time. I think this would be a very knee-jerk reaction to ban this card. I do understand that maybe banning something else out of the deck could still lead to Hogak being ridiculous, but I don't like the idea of knee-jerk reactions where, okay, this card came out, bad touch, we have to ban it. And that's why some of these other cards here are on this list as well. I think this card hasn't been given a fair shake quite yet. I have seen a lot of people want it banned just because a turn 2 8/8 that can't be pushed, that can't be bolted, that can't be abrupt decayed is an issue. It can be path. Path doesn't necessarily fix it, especially in a deck like Dredge, where they're just going to keep throwing Hogaks at you. Um, but I think that this card isn't really the problem of the deck, though I do feel like it is grossly enabled by other cards. I would like to see this stay. I don't want Hogak to go yet, but I do understand people's reasonings for it, and I'm not a big fan of him. Like I said, I really want to see what happens with him going further instead of just, okay, we have 2 weeks of data, the meta's skewed, we have to burn something with fire. I don't think that's the way to go about it. That's just my opinion, though. That's how I feel about it. I don't know how everyone in the chat feels about Hogak, but like I said, I don't think it's time to go yet. I think we have to really give a deck time to spread its wings, see how ugly it can get. Though I know on the MCQ or whatever yesterday, there was a Bridgevine deck or Hogak Vine, whatever you want to call it, that did hit their opponent turn 2 for 17 points of damage through Hogak, 2 Vegevines, and a Bloodghast. And I know a lot of people were very upset, and Reduke had made the comment that that's not even the deck's full power. That wasn't even what it can do. I mean, so 17 on turn 2 is pretty gross. Was Hogak half that damage? Absolutely. Were there enablers that allowed the Hogak to come out that way, though? Yes. And we'll discuss more on that card later. Next card I want to talk about here is Ancient Stirrings, because Ancient Stirrings always seems to be in the fold, except for right now. Here's why. It's not seeing a lot of play. So what does that tell me? For the people who have been screaming for this card to get banned, it's pretty much doing nothing right now. So you guys would have wanted a card banned that was doing something that now does nothing. Now, once the Bridgevine meta falls off, either through ban list or people start playing more Graveyard Hate in their main, in their side, whatever, does Ancient Stirrings come back and become a powerhouse? For sure. I mean, the card's been good for as long as the format's been around. I don't think that's ever going to change. I know for a lot of people, the whole, you know, you can only get a colorless card off it. You don't really have to build around it. You know, if you didn't have to build around Ancient Stirrings, it would be in every deck. So clearly you do have to sort of base your deck around it. Now the decks that are playing it aren't, because they're mostly colorless. I get that. But I still don't think Ancient Stirrings necessarily has to go. And like I said, right now it's not doing anything. It will probably do something in the future. But I think for now, Ancient Stirrings is fine. You know, this has been one of the quote-unquote modern format offenders for a long time now. And Modern has continued to be a format, even with Ancient Stirrings running around. I don't feel like it would be fair to push this card out, especially now that it's not doing anything. Again, you know, certain bans could definitely push this card back into the limelight again, but I feel like we can't have these formats or these ban lists be made on swingy formats. To me, that's not smart, because there's going to be decks that rise to power, like Grixis Shadow did a couple summers ago, where all of a sudden this deck comes out of nowhere. It's the best deck ever. It's just like a legacy deck. It has to be banned. Within a few months, it withered away. It's still a deck. It's still good. The pilots who played are great pilots. But if we would have made that knee-jerk reaction and got rid of something out of that deck, we would have essentially needlessly removed a deck from the format because mass hysteria, which is something that I think modern players have to learn to keep more in check. They're so ready to ban the next card that touched them wrong, instead of either A, changing their deck, 2, changing cards in their deck, or 3, just not playing the format. As we've seen from Wizards, especially with cards like Ancient Stirrings, pissing and moaning doesn't get your card banned. Players not playing the format get cards banned, okay? And I know when Twin got hit, it was a big chunk of the meta, and it was a big chunk of the meta for a long time. Ancient Stirrings decks, though, aren't just a deck. There's a multitude of decks that use it. So I don't think it needs to go. Next card here, Faithless Looting. Again, a card that has kind of gone up and down on that it needs to go. It's too good. No, it's fair. No, it's too good. And now it's just like it is too good. One, I hate the argument of people that say you get to draw 4 cards for 1 mana. No, no, no. You get 4 cards between 4 mana. That's okay. Doesn't bother me. Do the decks that play it use it unfairly? I don't know. I wouldn't say unfairly. I mean, yeah, you have decks like Dredge that they need that card. I think if Dredge doesn't have that card, Dredge withers away. The Hogak deck clearly makes good use of it. But you look at some of the more fair decks like Mardu Master, which is recently having a nice resurgence because of some of the cards from Modern Horizons, which is one of the deck types we're going to cover down the road. Just because that deck had a very interesting change in formation on what it's done. But I don't feel like Faithless Looting has to go. And one of the reasons why I would like it to stay around, and I know this is going to make a lot of people very upset, I look at Faithless Looting in Modern like I do in Brainstorm and Legacy. It's one of those pillar cards. It's a draw to the format. I know a lot of people don't like that, and I know a lot of people go, well, Modern and Legacy are completely different. And you're right. That's a different topic video, though. I don't feel like getting into that right now. But I will say, there's nothing wrong with having cards relevant to the format. For a long time, Karn Liberated was one of those cards. That was a pillar card in the format. Jund was a pillar card with Lily, with Tarmogoyf. I remember when people wanted Goyf banned. Does looting enable really corny decks like Dredge, which a lot of people don't like right now? The Arclight deck that I have seen go off turn 2 and put 9 power on board, even 6 power on board, is pretty disgusting because that's going to really shorten the clock for your opponent. Yes, it does do some unfair stuff. Yes, most of the decks that play it aren't necessarily fair decks. But I don't think Wizards is going to hit a card like this, sort of like the same way they don't hit Stirrings. And that's because hitting this card makes way too big of a sweeping change to the format. Normally, when they hit decks in Modern, they don't hit 6 decks. They hit 1 key deck. And I personally agree with that. I don't want to see decks get banned into the ground and completely unplayable because someone's butthurt. People have to learn to make sacrifices to their deck. I understand right now having to play things like Spellbomb, or Nihil Spellbomb, Surgical Extractions, and I mean to some extent things like Rest in Peace and even Leyline of the Void in their main. Part of playing competitive Magic is metagaming. So if there's going to be concessions you have to make your deck viable, I don't feel like you can stomp your feet and cry about it. You have to accept the fact that this is competitive Magic. I have to be ready. And you know that these graveyard decks all play Faithless Looting. You know what the card does. So I kind of feel like that's your choice for not trying to play the hate. I'm not saying it's good for the format, but I don't think that Faithless Looting has to go just because a lot of corny decks are playing it. This is one of the cards that keeps them alive. So to just say we should nuke the whole format, I think is unfair. So to talk about the next card here, we have Scale Up. Sorcery. Target creature becomes a 6/4 worm till the end of the turn. Now this is only on here for a few reasons. One, I've seen a lot of people who are very afraid of what Infect going forward will do with a card like Scale Up. Two, there has been some Bridgevine or Hogak Vine players complaining that they died turn 2 to Infect. Well, I feel like Infect could be really good right now. And I think Scale Up makes the card, or the deck, potentially that much more lethal. But is Infect good because Scale Up is broken? Or is Infect good because decks aren't playing removal right now? I think you know what that answer is. Decks aren't playing removal right now. Hogak doesn't play removal. Dredge doesn't play removal except for Conflagrate, which is not enough. Tron doesn't play removal. Eldrazi Tron, or Eldrazi doesn't really play removal. Humans doesn't really have removal. So, of course, Infect is going to sneak in there when there's no removal. That's what the form or the deck prize on. You're going to be an unfair deck. I'm going to race you through combat. Now, I know a lot of people don't like Infect because it cuts your life in half. I get it. Does that feel bad? Absolutely. Does a card like Scale Up make it worse? Probably. But to say Infect right now is unfair, I think is wrong. And especially because there hasn't been a ton of Infect decks doing stuff right now. I think if they ban Scale Up, it would be a precautionary measure that they think, okay, maybe this might be too good. But I want to get more results with Infect before we ban this. Because if the format shifts away from Hogak Vine and people can play removal again, I feel like Infect still is in the deck. It can definitely sneak under the radar, and if your opponent keeps a clunk of your hand, sure, they're going to get you. But with the little resurgence we have right now of decks like Jund and Jeskai, there's enough decks playing removal in the format. But there's a lot more decks not playing removal right now. So I don't think we need to hit Scale Up. But I do know people don't like Infect, so if they hit it, I guess. I get it. But I don't think Scale Up makes Infect the best deck in the format. It helps a deck that's not seeing play to maybe come up. And it's sorcery speed, so they can't surprise it. It's completely telegraphed to you. Okay, they're going to try to scale up now. What do we do? It's stuff you got to be prepared for. I think that this card just punishes players for playing unfair decks. I have no problem with it. Mox Opal. We put Mox Opal on here not because we wanted to, but because, again, I just wanted to make another point with things like Ancient Stirrings. You people, everyone, not necessarily you, my viewer. I like to assume my viewers are very intelligent when it comes to Magic. That you know, this card's not doing anything right now. Yeah, it could have been doing stuff before, like with Affinity and stuff like that. I just, I think we need to quit screaming about Mox Opal at this point. There's worse things. I guess to a point, Ancient Stirrings is probably worse than Opal. Personally, I don't think either of them need to go. You're just kind of beating a dead horse. Let's stop with that. So the next card here we're going to talk about, Altered Dimension. This is a new card out of Modern Horizons, originally way back out of the day in Tempest. You sacrifice a creature, target player puts a number of cards from the top of their deck into their graveyard equal to the creature's power. Why is this on here? Basically only because of the Hogak deck. Being able to mill them out, having a backup plan, especially when you have cards like Gravecrawler. I'll play it back, bring it back, I'll sack it, mill some, I'll do it again. Here comes my Vengevines, mill you more. But, and I brought this up in one of the Facebook groups I'm a part of today, name one other deck in Modern right now that's playing Altered Dementia. That's right. Nothing. There's a reason for that. Altered Dementia is not really a good card. I'm going to tell you the truth. The card sucks. It's only good in the Hogak deck. I don't think we're going to see another Altered Dementia deck. Probably anytime soon. It's more cute than good. Tapping out on turn 2 to play it does nothing. Sacking your creature, if you play one on turn 3, probably not going to do enough. The real offender of that deck is the next card we're going to talk about. And that is Bridge from Below. Now, Bridge from Below has been in the format for a long time. I'll give you a hint. Since the beginning of the format. And it hasn't really done a whole bunch of stuff, except in Dredge. And that's where it belongs. For people who don't know what Bridge from Below does, it's 3 black enchantment. Whenever a non-token creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you create a 2/2 black zombie token. Whenever a creature is put into an opponent's graveyard from the battlefield, if Bridge from Below is in your graveyard, exile it. So the triple black means nothing. The fact that it's an enchantment means nothing. You don't want this card in play. You only want to mill it. And yeah, that's where things like Faith Suiting make this card kind of good as well. Being able to get them out of your hand is fantastic. But I digress. Here's a card that has been okay in the format. I wouldn't say it's been busted. Being able to kind of have an army in a can when you're sacking your stuff or losing stuff via blocks, board wipes, and stuff like that. This card is fantastic. Now, again, Bridge from Below can be played around because this is whenever a creature from your opponent's field is put into their graveyard, so they control it. They could bolt their own creature to get rid of your Bridge from Belows. A lot of creatures, though, can't really make use of it properly, like Dredge can. If there's any card on this list I think that should be banned right now, and I will say right now, it is Bridge from Below. Bridge from Below is unfair in the Hogak deck because you have 1 or 2 of these in your yard. You bring back, or you sack your Hogak to your altar, trigger your Bridge from Belows. So let's say you have 3 in the yard. You get 3 tokens now. Alter Dimension triggers, they mill 8. Hogak is now in your yard. That's not that bad, right? But instead, you use the Hogak to mill yourself. Alter Dimensions is target player. So you continually bring back your Hogaks, and you sack them to altar, continually triggering your Bridge from Below. So now in that deck, you're getting back your Vengevines. You're going to keep summoning your Hogak from the bin, and you're going to keep getting 2/2s from Bridge from Below. So you pretty much just loop that for a critical mass to mill your opponent's deck. This is the only card in the deck I think could go if they really wanted to keep that deck in check. As I said earlier, Altar's not seen play in any other deck. There's absolutely no point to hit it. And the art on it's pretty swaggy. We brought out the wine today because we figured we're going to have an intimate discussion with our viewers. No point to be cute about it. And while Hogak could be good on his own, I want to see what he does. The card is intriguing to me. I don't think it's fair to just ban it out of the gate. I really think if any of these cards on this list could be banned, the only one potentially right now that could be is Bridge from Below. That's the key card in that deck. Now you could say, yeah, but then you're shutting off Dredge too. To a point, yes you are. And I will say that regular Dredge and Hogak are really 2 separate decks. They function completely different. And while I don't think Dredge should be penalized for what Hogak is doing, I don't think a knee-jerk reaction to Alter or Hogak is where we want to be. I think as a community of Magic players, we need to be sensible on stuff. And I don't feel like just destroying a deck that's 2 weeks into its life cycle, because I think the ban list comes out next week. I believe they have an announcement for it next week. I don't think that's fair to that deck to just get blown out of the water. Does it need to be pushed down a peg? Probably. Um, I will say that the deck had a great showing over the weekend. Um, the SCG had a ton of Hogak in the top 32. I want to say 18. And I want to say for the Mythic Championship or whatever, they also had a huge showing of the Bridgevine deck. And both tournaments also had a huge showing for Arclight Phoenix. So you could make the argument maybe it's time to let looting go. If over 50% of your top 32 is going to be 2 graveyard-based decks playing Faithless Looting. I don't think Modern is ready for that kind of shakeup. And when big sweeping bans happen, that is a good way to push players out of the format, not pull them in. I really think that Wizards has to be pretty careful here on what they do with this, because this could absolutely be a terrible thing for the format if they just go nuke crazy. Personally, do I think anything is going to get the axe come, what is it, the 8th? I don't think so. We don't have enough evidence yet that Hogak is the end-all be-all deck. It is definitely beatable. Some of the problems are it can play through hate, though. I've seen it play through Leyline of the Voids. I've seen Mola 4. They ripped their Nature's Claim, shot it, the next turn went off. Playing Vengevines with haste is huge. Bloodghast getting haste is huge. The deck is quick. It's very fast. But I don't think anything's going to get banned, and if anything does get banned, I think Bridge from Below should be that card. I think that's just the safest one. Like I said, Scale Up Infect hasn't been doing anything. It's kind of starting to come out of the woodwork. But again, there's no decks playing removal. With the revival of Jund, with the new builds of Mardu Pyromaster, with American and Jeskai still being good, Blue, White, and Jeskai, I think we leave Scale Up for now. We see what happens there. I think Faithless Looting is too big of a shakeup to the format. I can't see that happening, though the card is played in a lot of decks. It is a scary card, but I do think it's kind of a pillar in Modern at this point. Faithless Looting's always been around. As time has gone on, it's got much better. Ancient Stirrings right now is not doing anything. Ancient Stirring decks aren't great. I don't think we hit that. Hogak being a new card, I think Wizards would be afraid to ban it for a few reasons. One, hitting a card that just came out 2 weeks ago makes Wizards' design team look terrible, especially because this is a set designed for Modern. I think that's a bad look for them. And two, like I said, I really want to see where this card goes without some of the extra weight pulled from things like Bridge from Below. So I don't really want to see it gone. But essentially, a 7-mana 8/8 on turn 2 is very hard for a lot of decks to interact with, which means we would need to get an answer for this card fairly quick. Opal decks haven't been doing a whole bunch. I do see Grixis Urza, and that's kind of coming around, but I don't think we need to hit Opal right now. Altered Dimension is only played in the Hogak deck, so I don't think that's deserving of a ban at all. I want to see kind of what this card can do. If there's some crazy brews with it, the card could be interesting. And as we said, Bridge from Below, huge offender of the format right now. This is what allows Alter and all that stuff to happen. So this is probably the safe card to hit, but I honestly think no bans come when the ban list is announced. Now, with that out of the way, I want to talk about the possible unbans. There's been a lot of people right now sitting online thinking a lot of cards are safe to unban, that there's cards that are wrongfully banned. So we're going to take a look and discuss those. And as you can see here for future deck techs, we have Mardu Pyro for Modern. We have Legacy Rug, not Temur Delver. We have Red-Green Combo Lands. And we have Not My Mardu, which is the evolution of the Pyromaster deck. The Pyro decks will probably be rolled up into one video, one stream, just for the sake of easiness. I don't think it's necessarily worth stretching out. So now here, let's discuss our unban list discussions. As you can see here, we have more cards on the unbanning list than we do on the banned list. We're going to go over each of the cards. We're going to talk about them. Some do get lumped together. This time I want to start with everybody's favorite card, Splinter Twin. Could Splinter Twin right now be unbanned? I'm going to say yes. Here's why. You look at a lot of decks right now. There's not a ton of combo decks. You have things like the Neo brand deck, which needs such a long shot for it to work. You have the Devoted Druid deck, which is actually coming up in numbers now. It's doing a little more. But I think Twin would be safe. Hold on. We'll get there. We'll get there. But I think with Twin, you have to play essentially 10 pieces to maybe 8 pieces in your deck for your combo to work. You have things like Push that came out. You have Assassin's Trophy that came out. Abrupt Decay is still a card. Thoughtseize and Inquisition are still good. A lot of the tools that made Splinter Twin really good being Electrolyzed. Electrolyzed isn't good anymore. No one's playing Electrolyzed. Maybe a one of and Jeskai at best. It's too slow for 3 mana at this point. You look at Remand. Remand's not good enough for the format anymore. Remand is pretty much a junky card now. Do some decks play it? Yes, because it cantrips essentially in Time Walks. Honestly, it's not that good. Bolt is no longer the de facto removal piece for Modern, so Bolt gets a little sad there. You still don't have your perfect draw. You do have Opt, which I think Twin would like. I still think Serum Visions is a little better for the deck, just because the Scrying 2 is huge. But I could see decks like that playing Opt just to be able to kind of wait, try to sculpt their draws at the end of your turn to try to make their turns flow a little nicer. Do I think Twin will get unbanned? Absolutely not. It was banned for the sins of the format. And I think looking, come on, there you go, shut my fan off. Looking at where the format currently is, I don't think Splinter Twin can ride with Eldrazi. I don't think it can really hang against decks like Dredge. The colored combination of the old blue-red I think are too narrow. I think the deck would have to go something like Grixis, and even then you don't necessarily have the greatest answers. I do think the deck would be safe. I understand the fear that people have of the combo coming back, but looking at a lot of Twins cards, it's just not as good as it would be. Would a lot of people try to play it again? Absolutely. Do I think it could hang? Probably not. But Wizards isn't very good at unbanning stuff, and I think Twin's just one of those cards that has to stay gone just because it died for the sins of the format. I do believe that. I know Twin was played a lot in its day, but whatever. Next card here to talk about is Birthing Pod. A lot of people think Pod could be safe to come back. And I think for this one, it's a little hairier here. Because on one hand, you have a deck like Hogak, which is putting 17 power on board turn 2. You have a deck like Birthing Pod that isn't even playing Pod until turn 3 at the earliest. Okay. You have decks like Arclight that can potentially put 9 power on board with a really nutty turn 2 draw. Probably better than what Pod's doing. Do I think Pod would be slow now? I do. I know a lot of people go, but Fluffy, people are just going to play Birthing Pod over Collected Company decks. That could happen. I don't think it does, though. I think the company decks stay company decks. I think the Birthing Pod grindy decks come back too. I think they're two separate decks. But my problem here with Pod is, again, like Twin, it died for the sins of the format. The deck was really consistent in a time when we didn't have a ton of removal, a la Push, a la Kolaghan's Command, and Assassin's Trophy. The format was different then. I think Birthing Pod at this point is way too slow. I couldn't see it really making a huge dent, but I can't see them unbanning it. You know, they've made their fixed versions with things like Eldritch Evolution, and that card sees no play. I think Pod would see no play. Would it be another fair deck in the format? I think it would be considered a fair deck, but I know for a lot of people, they were touched by Pod, they never want to see Pod again. And I know Wizards can go, well, you know, Pod hampers the design of our creatures. Well, I think looking at things like Hogak, clearly Birthing Pod hampers your design of creatures. I don't like that argument, and you're absolutely right, Seth. You know, we have the variant creature of Pod, and that thing sees literally no play. As a creature, and it not having haste, it's awful. Could Pod and Venifar go in a deck together? For sure. But I just think the 4 mana is too much. I think 3 mana was the sweet spot for Pod because you could pay your 2 life. And the fact that you could potentially tap Pod right away makes it really, really good too. Venifar, you kind of have to jump through hoops a little bit. It's not quite as strong. And I think being either the green or just the colorless mana is really where its strength is. I think Venifar kind of locks you into what you have to play colors-wise because it has the blue. You want to be able to clearly cast or to try and Pod off. But as we've seen, they're just too slow. 4 mana is way too much to have to potentially wait till turn 5 to start gaining advantage off that. Would I like to see Pod come back? I absolutely would. I think Pod and Twin are sort of in the same boat right now. They're just sitting in the boat in their little cells waiting to be freed. I think it would be absolutely safe, especially with what's going on right now in the format. But I just think Wizards goes, no, guys. Remember what happened 4 years ago when we banned Pod? Do you want that again? Honestly, I think a lot of modern players would go, yeah, we do, because there was more mid-range decks, there was more interactive decks. At that time, when Pod got banned, the main combo decks were a very fringe, unfinished Cheerios list, a very unfleshed out Storm list, which was doing like literally nothing, and Twin. And like I said, I just think it could come back. I don't know why people think it has to be banned forever. It's not good. I think if people were to sleeve up Pod decks today and play against what's out now, the Pod decks would just get smashed. Okay, this one is not my idea. Scouring forums, I've seen a lot of people, and I'm assuming these people made these comments based on they've never played with this card before. But some people are like, Jitte would be fine to bring back because we don't have Stoneforge, and it's 4 mana and an attack before you really gain value off it. Now that part is true. You would have to cast it for 2 and equip it for 2. So the turn you're casting it, you're probably not equipping it. That is correct. For people who have ever played Cube, for people who have ever played Legacy, for people who ever had to play around with Jit and actually got to play with the card, there's never a safe time for Jit. It does way too much. And if Jit was legal, it would definitely push back any sort of creature deck that could be, just because you do have the instant speed removal at no cost. You have the pump spells to end game. You have the gain life for burn spells. It does too much. Anyone saying Jit should be unbanned has never played with it, really played with it, has never had to sit across from it. I don't think Jitte is safe to bring back. There is no right format for Jitte. And yes, I know we don't have Stoneforge, so I could see I guess I can see the visions of, well, now it has to be safe because you can't cheat it into play. Well, look at the people who make the argument that Batterskull is broken. Without Stoneforge around, how many decks are playing Batterskull? 0. A ton of decks would jam Jit because it's Jit. You don't need Stoneforge for Jit to be good. In my opinion, you need Jit for Stoneforge or with Stoneforge to make Batterskull playable. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. I hope Jit stays banned forever in Modern, because if there's going to be any form of creature-based decks, Jit has to stay gone. It's not that it's an unfair card, but it's an unhealthy card, and that's where the issue lies. Again, another one that's not my idea here. I have seen people saying Punishing Fire should be unbanned. Kind of in the same vein of Jit, where what's 2 damage really going to do? How many decks are actually playing Grove of the Burnwillows? You know, we used to have our Greentron, and that was sort of the scare there, like, ooh. And now it's either just green, or we've seen some green-black variants, we've seen some green-white variants. The green-red kind of fell off the way because of things like Pyroclasm no longer being useful. Unlike Jit, I am very conflicted on Punishing Fire. I think on the one hand, the card could be a really bad hoser. Again, basically 4 creature decks. But at the same time, I think right now, Modern has more, no pun intended, punishing things going on than Punishing Fire. At least with Punishing Fire, creature decks could potentially hang around, as compared to with something like Jit. Whatever creature deck got their Jit first wins the game. That's not okay. Punishing Fire does use a lot of mana every turn, but I understand the slow burn of it is very annoying to play against. It can be a very big hoser against creature decks. It can be an oppressive card. I guess I'll go with my gut instinct and say Punishing Fire should probably be tested. Let's unban it, see what happens. What decks really want Punishing Fire right now? I can't really think of any. I don't think it just goes into Dredge. It doesn't go into Humans. It doesn't go into American or Jeskai. Azorius or Jeskai. It could maybe go into Burn. I don't really see them playing it though. 3 mana to ping essentially for 1 every turn. Not really that great. Like if they're having to try to win by Punishing Fire, they've probably already lost that game. Plus with their Eidolon and stuff, they're just going to end up killing themselves even faster. I'll give you 1 life to ping you for 1 and pop myself for 2. Clearly this doesn't go into a deck like Affinity or Hardened Scales. I don't think Tron variants would really want Punishing Fire. So a deck that could want it would be something like Jund. I don't think Jund needs it though. Jund has enough removal between Bolt, Push, Skulligan's Command, everything else. So I think Punishing Fire could be safe. I don't see it getting unbanned. That's just my take though. But I do think it's clearly safe to let loose into the format. Now Ponder and Preordain here, we're just going to kind of talk about at the same time. I'm strongly against the argument that, well, if Ancient Stirrings is unbanned, Preordain and Ponder should be unbanned. The reason why is pretty much every blue deck would play Preordain and Ponder. And I know for some people, well, what's the problem with that? Modern doesn't really have proper card selection for a reason. As the Eternal formats go on, as curves come down, cards like these only get better. There's a reason why a ton of Legacy decks all jam for Ponder. There's a reason for it. And maybe sometimes Preordain, depending on your combo deck, is like a 1 of to a 2 of at most. You rarely see 4 Preordain. It's mostly 4 Ponder. The reason for that is, as mana curves come down, on turn 2, you can Ponder to find your threat, a kill spell or whatever, and cast it. As Modern's curve continues to come down, Ponder and Preordain only get better. In my opinion, I think Ancient Stirrings has kind of hit a ceiling right now. The decks are not doing that great because they can't keep up with what's going on. Ponder would still be great though. Now, I understand you don't dig as deep with Ponder or Preordain as you do with things like Ancient Stirrings. Still not a good argument. Ponder is a vanilla draw card. Ancient Stirrings is not. Decks like Storm could get way better because of Ponder. Potentially decks like the Neobrand could get a lot better with things like this just because it gives them some form of card draw. It gives Jeskai an actual turn 1 play that's not just Boulder Path. It gives the Azorius control decks an actual turn 1 play. And in a deck like those, being able to completely sculpt your draws right out of the gate is huge. That could be the card that tips them into, oh, now control is too good. A lot of players do find control stingy. I think in a format like Modern, I feel bad for the blue-white players. Have they got a lot of tools over the last year or so? Absolutely. Teferi has been lights out for them. Jace has been fantastic for them. Narset's a really good card. The 3 Fairy is really good as well. But they don't really have card advantage. They just have solid cards. For control to be good, you have to be able to 1-for-1. And you need good card advantage. I don't think unbanning Ponder and Preordain would be a good idea. And like I said, I'm tired of the argument of, oh no, it would be okay. It would be okay to unban those. I disagree strongly. I feel like it would be a horrible, horrible move for the format. Now, as Seth 1691 pointed out, Golgari Dreyfus. This is not my idea, okay? But I have seen some people say, well, ooh, thank you, Thame100, for that subscribe. Means a lot. Should Golgari Dreyfus be unbanned? Probably not. But I have seen some people say, well, if we're going to hit the Hogak deck, if we're going to lower the power on Dredge by removing something like Bridge, we should throw them a bone back. The bone back would be Golgari Dreyfus. Do I think it's necessary for those decks? No, I think Dredge 6 is really good. The power on this thing could be absolutely insane at the end of the game. And with a lot of people not playing Path right now, you pretty much need a board wipe or something like a Terminator Dreadbore to get rid of the Golgari Dreyfus. I don't think that would be the brightest idea. But I do understand the argument of, well, we have to kind of give them something back if we're going to crush their deck. Because if you take Bridge from Below out of Dredge, I don't know how well Dredge does anymore. The backbone of Dredge decks normally is Bridge from Below. So if you take the backbone out of that deck, I feel like it should get a tool back. But this is definitely not my idea for a card that should be unbanned. I think that this would be insane. At least right now, we have enough graveyard shenanigans going on. I feel like they would just be adding fuel to the fire. They'd be pissing people off. You know, a lot of people aren't happy with the way Modern is right now. Anyway, I think adding Golgari Gravetroll, no good. I can't see this happening, but like I said, I have seen people make arguments for it that if you're going to nerf a deck, you at least got to make a trade somewhere to make sure that people aren't just continually getting their decks smacked down, because we want people to play the format, not leave the format. Now for another one of the elephants on the ban list here, I think next to Twin and next to Pod, I think Stoneforge is one of the cards that everyone's been screaming to have unbanned for a long time now. And WotC have a terrible opinion on it. Their logic for why they didn't unban Stoneforge Mystic last ban announcement was because, well, according to our data, Blue-White is doing fine. Blue-White doesn't need help. Now Azorius Control is doing fine. Jeskai is kind of coming back a little bit just because it has the better clock. Being able to play things like Helix and Bolt do help end games. But do you really think, WotC, that an already crammed for space Azorius Control list is going to go, oh dude, we need to play our 4 Stoneforge and 2 equipment? What dead cards are they taking out of their list to accommodate this? What cards do they have in their main are absolute fluff to be able to squeeze in Stoneforges and equipment. Another quote from WotC. Oh, Stoneforge homogenizes all mid-range decks. Okay, so you have you got Pyromancer, Mardu Pyromancer. Doesn't even really play white. The newer variants kind of do, but those lists really make me scratch my head. Again, we'll talk more on that when we actually do our deck tech or deck review or whatever for modern Pyro. Okay, well, Jund isn't going to splash white or go to junk just for Stoneforge. Jund has that raw power to close games. And it's really strong kill spells, thanks to things like Terminate, Kolaghan's Command. So I don't think they just flip over to a junk list because, oh, you know, Stoneforge is just that good. Is a turn 3 Batterskull the worst thing in Modern you can do right now? Absolutely. I mean, just because the Hogak deck attacked you for 17 the turn before, dude, you just recovered all your life back because you're Batterskull. Is Batterskull a hoser for burn? Mm-hmm. Is Stoneforge going to eat a bolt? Absolutely. But I don't think Stoneforge is as oppressive as certain people. I'm not going to name names, but I'm looking at you, some of you SCG writers, that Modern can't handle Stoneforge shenanigans. I'm sorry, but it's not shenanigans. Legacy only has Stoneforge shenanigans, especially at this point, because of a card called True Name Nemesis. True Name Nemesis is a mistake. It's an overpowered card that requires no setup. And double blue on that is not a drawback. We're not here to talk about Legacy. I'm just saying. So I think Stoneforge is safe to come back. And I also think the equipment in Modern is not as strong as in Legacy. Fire and Ice would be eh. And I do mean just eh, because so many creatures can still block it. Light and Shadow has never been the greatest sword. I've liked it. But that would probably be the best one for Modern, just because you have Pro Fatal Push, Pro Path, Pro Germs. But they also have a chance to respond to you trying to equip it. Of course, Batterskull's Batterskull. Batterskull does Batterskull things, but I don't think it's OP in any stretch of the imagination at this point. The new swords from Modern Horizons, in my opinion, are terrible. Sorry if people disagree with me, but they suck. The blue-white one, it feels too blue-white. The red-black one feels too red-black. They're so narrow in what they do. In my opinion, they're just not worth playing. They went too safe with it, and they just printed, in my opinion, horrible mythics. You wasted. I mean, I always thought the blue-green one was the worst sword. I don't feel like that's necessarily the worst sword anymore. I really dislike the blue-white one a whole bunch. I mean, the red-black one has its uses. Oh hell yeah! Thanks for the lurk, butt juice soup, my dude. Thank you. I have a sip of wine to show my respect. Thank you. But I think that Stoneforge would be perfectly fine to bring back. I mean, you do get Samil, which is good. The Wolf, I guess, is okay because it kind of puts some more power on board. But I don't think a 2/2 Wolf is necessarily going to run away with the game at that point. And if it does, wow, okay, that's fair, I guess. Now for the last card here on the list. In my opinion, the most controversial card that some people think should be unbanned, and that's Deathrite Shaman. I'm going to start off with a little excerpt from WotC. This was an article they wrote way back in the yesteryears of long, long ago when they initially banned Deathrite. We're WotC, yada yada yada, health of the format, yada yada yada, mid-range decks, yada yada yada. Deathrite Shaman dug its grave for Legacy just like Stoneforge Mystic has. Now, as we saw, Deathrite Shaman got banned in Legacy. It's the only creature to be banned. So clearly, Stoneforge's grave wasn't that deep, because Deathrite went that much lower. Now, are Modern and Legacy two different formats? Yes. Is that a sign that maybe it would be okay? I do think so. But Deathrite becomes one of those cards, just like it did in Legacy, where every deck is going to start with 4 Deathrite and then 56 other cards. Oh, sweet. I hate the name, by the way. Magic Fest is just so, it's so awful. Like, what were they doing? Who wakes up and goes Magic Fest? Like, ugh, blech. Besides the point, though. I don't think Deathrite can come back because it immediately shrinks what decks you're going to want to play. And yes, it's going to go in mostly fair mid-range decks. And to a point, fair mid-range decks need a push. I don't think Deathrite's necessarily the way to go about it. That's just my opinion. Now for the hard truth of Modern. Modern is an Eternal format. What happens in Eternal formats? Mana curves come down. What also happens? Combo decks become a little stronger. What also happens? Mid-range decks get pushed out of the format. I know a lot of people aren't going to be happy with that. As time goes on, it only gets harder and harder for mid-range decks. If you really want a ton of mid-range action, you really got to go sit in Standard. And right now, Standard doesn't have a lot of mid-range. It's a lot of control and burn. And some Nexus. And oh, really, computer? You're going to die me, huh? Okay. I just don't think Deathrite can come back. The mana ramp is too huge. The fact that it's a win con and it gains life, the card just does way too much for 1 mana. Was this card fine for Standard? Absolutely. When they banned Bloodbraid Elf, should Deathrite have been the one to get banned? Yes. Should they have banned Deathrite immediately after and then unbanned Bloodbraid? Yes. Instead, they allowed a Johnny Jund to be a deck, and they allowed it to build its little repertoire for its grave, if you will. I don't think we'll ever be getting Deathrite back in Modern. I know a lot of people want it back. I just don't think we can have it back, though. It does too much. It skews people's deck building. The good thing, at least with Modern, if they unbanned it, was there is more creature removal between Bolt and Push, and it does add to a Kolaghan's Command and all that good stuff. But I just think Deathrite Shaman leads to too fast of starts for some decks. Being able to have 3 mana, probably 2 to 3 of any color that you want on turn 2, that's crazy. I mean, a Deathrite Shaman and like a bug control list, turn 2, you could seriously have 3 blue for something like an Archmage's, where the hell that card just came out? I don't think Deathrite can come back. Like I said, my personal opinion, it has to stay gone. But I know there's other people hoping. But it's just, it does too much. It's going to shrink the colors. It's going to shrink the deck choices right out of the gate. I don't think that's a good thing. So out of the list here, cards I think should come back. I think Twin should come back. I think Birthing Pod should come back. Personally, I'm interested to see what would happen if Punishing Fire came back. Do I think anything's going to get unbanned? No. I don't. I think if they'd unban anything, it would either be Pod, because I think Pod could come back. I really do. or Twin. I think at this point this is the only two, because Wizards is going to keep citing, well, Azorius is already good. They don't need Stoneforge. So Stoneforge, I think, is just going to stay banned forever. I completely disagree with the arguments for Ancient Stirrings and Preordained Ponder. They're two completely different sets of draw spells. The argument's got to stop. I think Grave Troll has to stay banned as well. Even if we do hit something out of the deck, it can't happen. Deathrite's, in my opinion, is too strong of a one-drop. For people who think Jit should be unbanned, clearly you've never played with or against Jit. Jit's disgusting. There's honestly no point to allow people to have Jit. I recommend they playtest it sometimes, really playtest it sometimes and see. It'd be a bad time. It would be a bad time. So, we gave our opinions for what could be banned, what should be banned, what's probably not getting unbanned. Is there something that you would like to see get unbanned? Is there something in the chat that you think should be banned, should be unbanned? Personally, like I said, I think the only thing that could be banned should be Bridge. It's really what makes those decks deck. I want to see what Alter does. I want to see what Hogak does. I think it's too early to have a knee-jerk reaction to scale up. Infect hasn't done a whole bunch. Decks aren't really playing removal. You're going to get punished. It's your fault. Ancient Stirrings and Mox Opal at this point, old news. Nothing to complain about there. Faithless Looting I think is too scary to hit because it makes a sweeping change to the entire format. I don't think Modern's ready to do that, especially because before Modern Horizons came out, they had said the format was looking healthy. Nobody should complain about where the format is. I do believe we have enough diversity. I think that Hogak just kind of drove the point home that, like, okay, the format really is all about the graveyard now. So I don't think Faithless Looting should be hit quite yet. Maybe let it go a little more. And again, for the unbanned stuff, I think that Twin should be, it won't be. Pod should be, it won't be. I would like to see Punishing Fire personally. I don't really know if it would ruin the format. So maybe just let it banned. Preordained Ponder, no. And like I said, I think Stoneforge and that just gotta stay. They just gotta stay banned. There's no point to unban them right now. Though again, I disagree with the fact that, well, because blue-white control is doing good, we gotta ban it, or we gotta let it ban. It's not gonna go in the control deck, people. Control is control. Most Blade decks in Legacy are mid-range decks. They just happen to play some counter spells in there. Just saying. So I hope everybody enjoyed the views, thoughts, and opinions. We have been scouring the internet like crazy, trying to make these lists as close to what people are talking about as possible. I tried to be as fair as I could with my discussions. I think the only one I'm sort of iffy on is Punishing Fire, and I feel like it's warranted to be kind of iffy on that because that could be a really scary card. It could also just do nothing. I do agree with Seth though that Deathrite really shouldn't be unbanned. It's just going to come in and skew stuff. Even if it's even if it's going into fair decks, I still think it does a little too much for its own good. It does too much. Now, I will say, someone last night I was playing games with somebody, and they had said, okay, so what if Deathrite was 1 green mana in a tapped exile land, and it only made a green mana? Now, I think that could be a decent fix. But I don't think it can also eat instants and sorceries. It could eat creatures, that would be okay. But I think Deathrite just does too much. I don't really think there's a proper fix for it outside of making a creature that's potentially just unplayable. Just super unplayable. So, with all that fun stuff said, we were able to eat up about an hour of your day. I'm pretty proud of that. Uh, if people like stuff like this and they want more discussion videos, we can do them. If people do decide they like them, as I said, down the road, we'll do some deck techs here. Um, Sadly, I won't have any footage for any of these decks, but I'm sure you can go onto the internet and find them. Someone actually sent me a way to play Magic Online, so I'm gonna take a peek at that. Um, I don't know if I'm gonna get around to it today or not, but like I said, we have a little Mardu Pyro primer to talk about, and then the two legacy decks that I personally own, being Lands and Delver. So those will be coming down the road. I'm not really sure when yet. I think I might leave the videos like these kind of like as just chill weekend streams, even if we don't normally do weekend stuff. That way we can have a kind of like a dedicated focused day for Eternal stuff right now, because we don't really have any MTGO cards or anything like that. We don't really have the camera to like record games and stuff like that. So that way we can just have a designated Magic day that doesn't muck stuff up, doesn't get in the way of the regular schedule. Um, Tomorrow's stream, 2 o'clock, we're going to unroll a new streaming schedule. Tomorrow we're also going to announce the subs and Patreons reward program as well. We're still trying to finish that off. I don't know. I don't think we're gonna do Arena tomorrow, just because what, in like a day or two, something like that. The core set drops, so I think we'll wait to do something arena related when the new set comes out, just so we have new stuff to look at. Maybe do a pack opening, discuss some of the cards in the set a little bit, stuff like that. Um, but I don't think the format's really gonna change, so I think we're still gonna try to steer clear a little bit of Arena for a little while. If a big shakeup comes, of course, we'll jump right back into it feet first, but I just don't see core set changing enough to make people excited for arena action right now. And as we know, our draft record is terrible and very painful on us, so I don't feel like we're going to do that. So with that out of the way, I hope you enjoyed the video or our little discussion here. I will be putting this up over on the YouTube in a day or two, just so anyone who missed it can go back and watch it. I'll let everybody know when it's up. Uh, I hope you enjoyed yourself. I know I had fun explaining my thoughts and opinions to everybody. Wow, we have 6 viewers. That's actually pretty insane. Hell yeah. See, I like when I don't know what my viewers are, because then sometimes like that you see 6 and it's just like, what? Oh, we also have the little super kawaii face thing today. I figured that was pretty cute. The donation tracker. It's okay that nobody donated, but we do need some run-in 6 for all of our legacy decks, which we will discuss later on down the road. Um, wow, I can't believe I dropped some stuff. That sucks. Drop some frames. Well, anyway, super thanks for everyone who poked their head in. I want to thank But Juice Soup for the alert. That helps me get my numbers up. That's super awesome. I want to thank Thane for the sub. And like I said, tomorrow afternoon, new stream schedule, uh, rewards program announced, and all that good stuff. So I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon, and hope to see you tomorrow. Peace and Miss Maximus.